This is Your Health, a podcast of the Integrated Health and Social Services University Network for West Central Montreal.
Hello, I'm Peter Anthony Holder. Welcome to this edition of Your Health. Students can sometimes exaggerate about the heavy workloads they have in school and look at the educational system as backbreaking. But one thing they should never take for granted is the amount of work they literally carry on their back. Backpacks are the standard method of carrying school supplies each and every day. But there is a danger of having a bag that is not right for the size of your child or not properly placing items in their backpack. And an improperly used backpack can lead to back trouble. Leonie Blanchette is an occupational therapist in the Neuromusculoskeletal program at the Constance Lethbridge Rehabilitation Center. Leonie, first of all, how should a parent go about choosing the right backpack for their child?
Well, there are a couple of things that you need to consider for a good backpack. One of the main things is to verify that the backpack has several adjustment options. One of the first things that you want to verify is to have padded shoulder straps that are about 2 inches wide, just to make sure that the weight of the backpack is well distributed throughout the backpack. And we want to make sure that they are well padded to make sure that they don't hurt the shoulders and make sure that the child is able to move their arms completely. Another thing that could be interesting is a chest strap between the two shoulder straps, just to make sure that the adjustment is appropriate for the shoulders. Finally, there's one thing also that you want to make sure is, and if it's possible, one of the ideal criteria to consider is to having a waist strap. This is going to be allowing to distribute the weight evenly throughout the whole body and the whole waist area. A back that has also some form of padding would be interesting for the child as well, in order to reduce pressure throughout the back and also to allow the child to have the backpack as close as possible to the back to make sure that everything is nice and comfortable. Another thing that could be interesting also for choosing a backpack is to make sure that you have multiple pockets. That way, your child is able to move around his objects and different school items to make sure that not everything is concentrated in the middle of the backpack, and so that the weight of the backpack doesn't kind of bring it towards the bum area. One of the last criteria, I guess, is more like an aesthetics, but it's also important for the parents, is it's always easier to have a backpack that's kind of light, that's easy to wash, and that's resistant. So it's usually better to try to avoid cotton or a jean backpack or even a leather backpack, just because something that is washable and something that is water repellent is going to be a lot easier to have.
And I would assume water repellent, because if your kid's walking home in the rain, that just makes the bag that much more heavier.
Exactly, and even if the child is wearing some form of water repelling clothes or has an umbrella, well, sometimes there's still water that goes on the backpack, and you want to also try to avoid having all your schoolwork and your homework full of water and not being able to have that excuse to say, well, I can't do my homework, it's all wet.
Now, I know it's important ergonomically to adjust the weight of the stuff that's inside your backpack. That's easier for older children who understand the concept, but when you have little kids, how do you get them to pack their backpack properly?
Yes, absolutely. There are some form of criteria. For the parent, one thing that is important to verify is the percentage of weight of the backpack. So it's actually very simple. You just have to keep it in mind. For a very, very small child, under 9 years of age, usually the total weight of the backpack should not go over 5% of the total weight of the child. And for a child that is less than 15 or 16 years of age, so between 9 and 15, it shouldn't go over 10%. So let's say your child is 50 pounds. Well, the backpack shouldn't be more than 5 pounds. And that can go by very, very fast, meaning that if you have two books, a water bottle, and a pair of sneakers, already that can be around 8 pounds. So you got to be careful for that. One of the things that when packing the backpack is to make sure that the child is only using the things that are really necessary for the homework or to bring to school. So you can always verify with the child to make sure that, well, what you're putting in the backpack is exactly what you're going to be using for that day. Another thing that can be interesting in terms of adjustment or tricks to make sure that the backpack isn't too heavy is you can ask the child to fill the water bottle only once he's arrived at school, meaning that you can just put an empty water bottle in one of the pockets of the backpack to make sure that doesn't add extra weight. And then making sure that when you're going to fill the backpack, if you're doing it with the child, you can show the child, well, anything that is very nice and straight can go against the back. And you can show the child, well, it's more comfortable that way. And anything that has like sharp edges or that has like a irregular form, just put that at the very top of the bag or, farthest away possible from the back.
When it comes to injuries, I mean, you have a back and spine problems that may occur from using a backpack if not packed properly or carried properly. What are some of the symptoms of these problems, and are they reversible?
Well, in terms of symptoms, a child can sometimes say, well, I'm feeling ache in my back, I feel pain in my back or in my shoulders or even my neck. Some children also say that they have some forms of headaches because the backpack is sometimes too heavy. Also, you can notice as a parent when you're looking at your child, if the child has a stooped posture, where he's actually like leaning forwards or even leaning backwards because the backpack is too heavy, trying to hold on to the straps in front to try to, remove the weight from the shoulders. These are all signs that something's going on with the backpack. And sometimes some children also say, I feel kind of like a tingling sensation in my arms. Well, this can be explained by the fact that there are a lot of blood vessels and nerves that go through the shoulders and the neck. And when we put too much strain on these structures, on the neck and the shoulders, well, that can bring tingling sensations. So it's not necessarily that it's causing a true injury, but it can cause certain forms of pains. And this is something that the parent has to be aware, because you don't want to leave your child feeling pain for too long of a time. So you want to make sure that you either readjust the backpack or make sure to notice and see, well, is it too heavy? Is the backpack too large for the child? Is it too long? Is it not well adjusted? Or is it filled properly? So these are all things that the parent can notice.
Now, by nature, kids are active. They play sports. They get scrapes and bruises. How do you know if their back pain is caused by a backpack as opposed to an injury or just simple growing pains?
Well, that is a very good question, because yes, childs are when they're growing, they sometimes feel pains, but typically we notice that the child will, say, I'm feeling pain in my knees or in my legs. That's most typical pain that's related to when they're growing. If they're feeling pains in the neck and shoulders, well, one, you want to make sure that there wasn't an injury that happened, for example, during a sport. So it's not necessarily easy to pinpoint the reason why the child is feeling this pain, but one of the main things that you can verify is if the child is saying, right after school when he's walking back from school, or as soon as he puts the backpack on his back and you notice a change of posture, slouching in front, stooped posture on the side, or trying to, you can notice visually on his face if the child is feeling discomfort. Well, this can be a sign that it's related to the backpack. If the child is saying that he's feeling pains and it's generalized, well, that is something that can be assessed by either a doctor or another health professional.
And how do you stress the idea of properly wearing the backpack? Because, sometimes kids want to be cool and have the backpack on one shoulder. They carry it differently. How do you stress this idea?
Well, that's the whole idea of having a backpack, is to have the weight properly distributed on both sides of the body. For sure, I mean, it might be a bit difficult with some teenagers because, yes, a lot of them would have the habit of putting the whole backpack only on one shoulder. But I think it's just a question of education and making sure that the child is aware that, you're growing right now. I want to make sure that we're preventing any injuries from happening, any pains from appearing. And so it's interesting to know that when middle school children have education on how to well adjust and how to well load their backpacks, they're actually saying that they feel less strains and less pain in the back and in the neck and in the shoulders. So I think it's all a question about backpack education, and it all goes into prevention of injuries and prevention of these symptoms.
And should you have pain, should your child have pain or other symptoms, what can be done about that? What should they do? What kind of exercises? Obviously, correcting whatever their backpack issue is the first thing. But beyond that, what should they do to help correct or ease the pain that they may be having?
Well, what's interesting is that here in Montreal, we do have some occupational therapists working in the school boards. So that could be one interesting option, is to ask the teacher if at their school the child would have access to just a small assessment with the occupational therapist. That way we can verify, is it only the backpack or is it also an ergonomical problematic, meaning that maybe the child is not positioned adequately also while doing his work at school with the desk, and also verify at home, well, if the child is seated properly and is positioned properly while doing the homework. So that could be interesting in terms of assessment with an occupational therapist. Make sure that, some of these items are global instructions in terms of adjustments for a backpack, but it's also interesting to know that there are occupational therapists that are specialized in pediatrics. There are also physiotherapists that are also specialized in pediatrics, which would be quite appropriate in the terms of if you adjusted the backpack and the child is still feeling pain, if the pain is still persistent in terms of the neck, the shoulders, well, consulting a physiotherapist could be able to determine, are there any other sources of problems causing these pains? For example, something related to growth, an anomaly, for example, scoliosis or things like that. The physical therapist will be able to assess mobility, strength, and different postural habits of your child. And then, depending on the results of the assessment, this professional will be able to give out some tips and easy exercises adapted to the needs of the child, and will determine a certain frequency of follow-ups just to make sure that the condition of the child doesn't persist in time.
That was Leonie Blanchette, an occupational therapist in the Neuromusculoskeletal program at the Constance Lethbridge Rehabilitation Center. As Leonie mentioned, if you have a concern about your child and their backpack, contact the occupational therapist within your child's school board or contact a physical therapist. And that's it for this edition of Your Health. Again, we remind you, if you missed any of our previous programs, you can find them archived on our website at podcast.ciusswestcentral.ca. That's podcast.ciusswestcentral.ca. You'll find there all the information such as links or phone numbers that we've mentioned in the show. Also, feel free to drop us a line if there is a topic or area of discussion that you'd like us to explore on future shows. I'm Peter Anthony Holder. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to Your Health, a podcast of the Integrated Health and Social Services University Network for West Central Montreal. Join us next week for another edition of Your Health.